Al, it only took us like a month, but it's finally time to reach the culmination of Al experiences the Yakuza series by you experiencing a brand new game that comes out.
It's true. Oh man,
The true experience.
it was wild. It did take us a while though. Whoops.
It did take us a good while. It was worth it in the end.
Oh yeah, it was absolutely 1,000% worth it.
True and true. That's for true. Hello, welcome to this week's episode of Seasonal Anime Checkup OVA. It's a podcast where we have conversations about video games, anime, and manga. Hello, I'm Jared, joined as always by Doc, Al, and Ladium.
Hello.
This is episode 253. And it's time to talk about Lost Judgment and where we lost it at. Where's that judgment? Why did I lose it?
I think we lost judgment a long time ago.
That's pretty true. Pretty true. This is the sequel to Judgment.
It is.
And the latest Ryogai Gotoku studio game. So there you go. There's that. So yeah, this was the first Yakuza team game that came out worldwide simultaneously, which was a big surprise.
Yeah, that was super surprising.
Came out on September 24th, 2021 for the PlayStation consoles and the Xbox consoles. And that's it.
That's it.
Nothing else. And it is there's a whole bunch of new stuff in this game, from Judgment, new story, new side cases, new characters, new systems,
New dog.
new dog,
New skateboard.
a new skateboard, excuse me, all sorts of stuff.
New cat friend mechanics.
New cats, new city,
Oh, right. New city. That's kind of a big one.
new city.
New city.
So there's a lot that they cram into this game.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember what our final playtime was?
It was like 65 hours ish.
Nice.
I want to say.
Killing it.
Yeah.
Oh, and they got rid of the pinball machine.
They did get rid of the pinball machine, which they got rid of the pinball machine in like other versions of Judgment.
Mm-hmm.
But they now replaced it with a Sega Master System, which is very funny.
Yep.
You can go around buying games for it. It's pretty good.
It's pretty good.
Pretty good. Pretty good. So that's pretty funny. So yeah. We have a whole lot that we got to talk about with this game.
Yep.
Whole lot. Because there's a lot that happens in this game. We're probably not going to get to all of it because we don't want to be here for like 7 hours talking to you about Lost Judgment. We could, but that's a long time.
Yeah, we'll do the truncated version of talking about it.
It's a long time.
And I won't even lie to you, we spent most of that like 60 hours doing like side quests and school story stuff.
That's very true, yes.
So the main story is very, very good,
Mm-hmm.
but the chunk of our time was not spent with the main story.
It's a lot of time spent with the school stories, the side stories, and just doing a bunch of other just like various side activities that we could do whenever they would pop up, because that was kind of what we did. And then like once we got to the end of the game, it was just like, oh yeah, now we can just speed through the end of this game because we don't really have anything else to do.
The funniest thing is that it like every once in a while I'd be like, oh yeah, you need to kill some time around the city before somebody comes to call you about this thing. And because we had already done everything in the city, we would just like go a few feet and it's like, oh, they're ready for you. It's like, we haven't even left like being in your like line of vision.
Yeah.
It's great. It's really funny.
They just knew. Everyone was just on the ball.
Yeah, they were like, all right, cool, we're ready. Why'd you leave? We were good to go, man. It was fantastic. But yeah,
It's really funny.
we did spend a lot of time doing the side stuff. That was pretty rad. We dated some girls.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them almost literally
75% of them not good.
No.
25% good.
25% fantastic. A+, best dateable.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I realized when I said that, I was like, yeah, the three of them are quite literally girls almost.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of women.
Not good.
Not good. Anyway, where do you want to start with this?
I want to make brief mention of the two of the new characters in this game they used Japanese celebrities
Oh, Japanese
as voice and
celebrities.
likeness.
Okay.
The one is of Akihiro Ohara, who was played by Ken Mitsuishi. He's an actor, does some stuff, obviously. And then the other is Kazuki Soma, who is played by Hiroshi Tamaki, who also an actor, sings a lot as well. And apparently plays the main character in Way of the House Husband in the live action version of it. Which is probably that would be a very weird jump between the two.
Yeah, wow. All right.
So that's something funny.
Oh boy. I mean, it's no beat Takeshi, but
no.
You can't always be beat Takeshi.
You can't always be beat Takeshi. That's for true. Yeah, so let's start with some development about this game.
Okay.
Because this game kind of just came out of nowhere, and then they were like, hey, it's coming out soon. And we're like, okay, cool.
Yep.
Yay.
Yay.
Let's see here. Lost Judgment is the directorial debut of Kazuki Hosokawa, who aims to make it superior to its predecessor, from which he worked as producer while attempting to also create an appealing narrative. He claims, about a year ago, when we were in the initial phase of development, there was no lockdown in Japan, and the situation wasn't as severe. But once we entered the final stages of production, things were getting serious and it became harder to communicate. There was a loss of speed, and we wished we were able to discuss things faster. If we were in person, we would have been able to do that, and so it was definitely a cause for stress. As a result, Hosokawa claims that he wanted the staff to be comfortable in the making of it. They aim to properly balance the different types of gameplay, fight, puzzles, trailing, and disguises, which of course they're talking about the COVID-19 pandemic, obviously, because that is still an ongoing issue in every aspect of life.
Yep. Also, they didn't even put in the fact that there's a rhythm game. Wow. What about that type of gameplay?
There's so much gameplay. Although Judgment was a spin-off of the action series Yakuza, which became an RPG with Yakuza Like a Dragon, executive director Toshihiro Nagoshi and producer Kazuki Hosokawa claimed that Judgment would stay true to the action system originally developed for Yakuza. The open world from Yokohama features a high school which was based on real life. Nagoshi claims Lost Judgment was made thanks to the positive responses towards Judgment and thus aimed to improve the system based on the feedback. And then the game came out.
Yep.
Although Judgment was originally titled Judge Eyes in Japan and Asia, Sega liked the naming for the Western version, resulting into Judgment being part of the sequel's title even in Eastern territories. The plot was written to be realistic, something the staff found challenging, while providing themes seen as sensitive to the audience like bullying, as well as what should people call justice, with the latter being explored through Yagami's characterization. The youth drama is meant to balance the dark storytelling based on how Yagami interacts with teenagers.
And that's dark too.
Yeah. The cast features multiple returning and new characters. According to Yagami's Japanese actor Takaya Kimura, the story is deep and suspenseful, but also features lighter scenes like the school stories. Hosokawa claimed that the school interactions reveal a unique side of Yagami's character. Hiroshi Tamaki focused on realism when recording, comparing the entire game with a film. His first work in video game, the actor found it as an out-of-body experience. He describes Soma as looking like aloof and clearly perceptive, but hides a true persona he wanted the fans to look forward in the game. Ken Mitsuishi recalls Judgment was popular within the acting world, so he felt engaged when being offered the role of Akihiro Ehara. He did not find troubles understanding his character, especially thanks to the motion capture. As a result of the two crimes that Ehara claiming he committed, Mitsuishi said that his character was given a mysterious air. Akira Nakao reprises his role of Ryuzo Genda, who often mentors Yagami. The actor noted that he became highly popular thanks to Judgment, especially within the young demographics.
That's funny.
And then they put in Sonic the Fighters, because, yeah, of course you would.
I forgot about that.
And then they put music in the game.
It says, despite Judgment Yakuza taking place in the same universe, there will be no crossovers. That is a lie.
That is actually a lie.
It's a lie.
There is a crossover.
Mm-hmm.
Although it's very brief.
It's more of a cameo.
It is a cameo than a crossover, but there is a legitimate meshing of the two.
Yes, there is. And we both were just like, oh!
Yes.
It was exciting.
Let's talk about localization.
Okay.
Because like Judgment, this is an English dub,
and it's
Judgment
really good.
was the the first game since Yakuza 1 from this team to have an English dub. So the English recording studio was made in PCB Productions, owned by Keith Aram, with major aid by Vicky Lee. The translation was done by Jun Takagi, shored up with support from Shun Fukuda and Mino Iwasaki. Josh Malone, who worked on Yakuza Like a Dragon and Shinada in the Yakuza remasters, stepped up in a big way to handle voiceover. He was supported by Shervin Zadeh, Sean Gannon, and Stephanie Spoletti, who was also a Like a Dragon vet. Localization producer Scott Strickart said that Lost Judgment might be one of the most challenging works he has done due to the multiple requirements, including the dual audio, the multiple subtitles, and the game being released for 4 consoles. Nevertheless, he believes he has already produced similar content ever since Yakuza 0. Multiple words have to work in multiple situations, which Strickart considered a localization challenge. This is very poorly worded.
Yeah, a lot of this wiki is.
Yeah. There's also the chatter post and the Buzz researcher that use variables for the keywords players are searching. Strickart considered this one of the most challenging parts of making the game's localization. Having felt nostalgia from the years he localized the heavily school-themed game Persona 4, Strickart claims that the narrative involves multiple dark elements involving students, involving bullying or suicide. Although Judgment is not a popular game, which I don't know if that's necessarily true, Strickart finds it challenging releasing the game at the same time as the director's cut of Death Stranding, a game by the famous Hideo Kojima. That's a weird line to put in there at the end.
Yep.
Like, dog, this is a new game, and the other one's a game that's been out for a while.
Oh, boy.
For the English version, many of the previous voice actors returned, but Strickart said some were replaced for logistical reasons. Greg June noted that the predecessor helped to properly develop Yagami to the point he seemed like another person when quitting his lawyer occupation, as he took a liking to being a humble detective. This was mostly seen through the scene where Yagami tells Kaito that they should search for a lady's cat as part of their job in a pleased manner, something the localization team enjoyed recording. As a result, he claimed that for the sequel, the game kind of teed me up to be really in that Yagami mindset where, yeah, I love being a detective, but some cases are a real bummer and super boring. However, in regards to the narrative, he claimed that he had to keep living the character due to new elements being provided. He believed that Lost Judgment explores more of Yagami's anger, something the first game did not focus on. Aside from Shun reprising his role as Yagami, returning cast members include Crispin Freeman as Masaharu Kaito, Brian McNamara as Ryuzo Genda, Mark Whitten as Fumiya Sugiura, River Vitae as Makoto Tsukumo, you know how to pronounce this one.
I actually don't, but Ziaja
as Issei Hoshino, Steve Bloom as Toru Higashi, and Jeremy Lee as Mafuyu Fuji. New English cast members include Art Butler as Akihiro Ihara, Brent Mukai as Daimu Akutsu, Todd Habercorn as Jin Kawana, Erica Lindbeck as Yoko Sawa, Kaylee Mills as Mami Koda. I forget how to pronounce her name. Xanthi Wen?
That sounds right.
As Kyoko Amasawa, Sungwon Cho as Tesso, Edward Bosco as Kisuke Watanabe, and Alex Lee as Shinya Kawai. Returning actors such as Matthew Yin Kang, Jameson Price, Yuri Lowenthal, and Keith Silverstein voiced new characters entirely, being Kazuki Soma, Yuzo Okuda, Sado Takano, and the owner of Bar Siren, respectively. Amy Castle does not return to voice Saori Shirasaki in the sequel and is replaced by Stephanie Shea.
Which is wild.
Mm-hmm. And then this has the same thing as Judgment and Yakuza 7, where depending on which dialogue or like which voice dub you're using, there is different subtitles for that specific dub.
Mm-hmm.
So the Japanese one has a different one compared to the English dub one, which is basically the same, just, there's localization changes given for the script and all that sort of stuff. And then they put out some DLC for this game, which is somewhat surprising because usually there's not a whole lot of like DLC for these games.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically with the third piece of DLC that's coming out later in 2022. It launched with the Detective Essentials pack, which comes with new skins for the dog. You get an additional skateboard. You get more girlfriends. And then the second DLC is the School Stories expansion pack, which gives you new items. You get new people to fight in the boxing gym. The boxing style is added as an actual fighting style and all that sort of stuff. And there's a couple other things I think as well. Like there's a robot you can use. And there's a new bike for the biker club. And maybe a couple other things. But yeah, those are like the main things. And then the third DLC coming in spring of 2022 is the Kaito Files, which is a story-based DLC.
With Kaito!
Starring Kaito, which again is very surprising because there usually is not story DLC for Yakuza games.
Nope.
So that is very interesting, and that whole DLC thing was interesting as well because of the whole like there was issues with the Japanese actor who plays Yagami.
Yep.
And his agency and Sega.
Yep.
To where like people don't know if they're going to make another game with him in it, if they decide to do another Judgment game, because things have been very weird with them, like his management team specifically.
Right. So I was asking you, like, I wonder if this DLC is like them testing out the waters of Kaito as the new pro tag or what they'll do, but I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah, I was real curious to see like with the way this game ends, if like they were going to set something up in that case.
Yep.
As like a way to leave themselves an out just in case they have to use it, but that definitely is not the case here.
Maybe the Kaito DLC would.
Maybe. I mean, who knows?
Who knows?
We'll have to wait and see. We'll have to wait and see. But yeah,
the good thing about the DLC is that you get the only good girlfriend from it.
It's true. That is very true.
God, she rules. She rules.
Especially because if you played the base game without it, you would only have the one.
Ugh, yeah.
Which is not as fun.
No. No.
No.
No. No. No. Sorry, you're gonna have to edit that later, and you're gonna hate me for it.
I'm not editing it. You think I'm lying? That ain't getting cut.
Oh no. Well, I meant more that you're gonna have to hear it. You're gonna be like, why'd she make that sound?
I mean, you make that sound all the time. That's nothing new.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. That's fair. That's fair. That's fair.
Exactly.
So one thing that I do want to mention with Lost Judgment is that there are some things that have been changed, and I want your opinions on them, such as like the tailing and how that's different.
There is less tailing in this game.
A lot less tailing.
And I'm very happy about that. I also really like the idea of them kind of making cover more dynamic instead of it being very rigid of like you can only go to these specific things. So that makes it a lot better. But also just the idea of them making less tailing is a big A+ in my book. Because God, I hated tailing in the other game because they really overdid it.
No, they super did. And then the whole like mechanic of like, oh, I can check my cell phone. Oh man, I'm looking for a signal. Woo.
Yeah, those were okay. Like they weren't really groundbreaking or anything, but like it was something different to do to kind of break up the monotony of everything else that you do. So like it gives you something else that's, detective-y. So I thought that stuff was okay. Chase sequences are basically the same.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing super new there. I like the third fighting style they added for this game, which is more like it's supposed to be more like counter focused, and you can do stuff like that, but also it's very good for crowd control, and you can like disarm people with weapons and all that sort of stuff.
Was that the snake one that has the really good like cheek slap move?
The green one, yeah.
Yeah,
you can intimidate people to like dying essentially with heat actions. I also really enjoyed the fact that they took out the life bar damaging mechanic.
Yeah.
So where you don't get locked, your life bar does not get locked away if you take like excessive damage or like gunshots or something like that, or damage from enemies who are in their heat mode. That's a real big improvement.
Yeah.
Because I didn't like that in the other game either.
No, that was annoying.
Yeah, so like that, getting rid of that kind of stuff was pretty smart. I think giving you like a skateboard or just something to kind of like move around town quicker was a smart idea, especially because Ijincho is such a bigger area than Kamurocho is.
Yeah.
So like having to run around that or like having to fast travel all the time would have been rough. So like giving you an option to kind of just like move around town at a quicker pace, and also you can just do some fun stuff here and there. It was another good addition, I think. So yeah, like there's a lot of good stuff that they added to this or like improved upon from stuff that's in the original game. We were talking about this when we were playing, but like they kind of just replaced the friend system with essentially the school stories part of the game.
Yeah.
Because that basically just becomes that aspect of it, which I think is for the best because the friend system and Judgment was a lot.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of people you have to go meet and do all that sort of stuff for. Whereas this, like, you'll still meet a lot of people, but like it's more condensed and there's just like an overarching story involved with it. So like, there's always something you feel like you are pushing for, which I think is a good thing.
Yeah. It's way more contained.
Yeah, and with the friends, you're kind of just like, going around and meeting people, and there may not be necessarily story involved with it. So the only part I think of the school stories I didn't like was the robotics club, just because I didn't like the robotics club minigame.
Yeah, so that was the other thing I was going to ask you is like the new mini game. So there's the rhythm mini game with the dance club. There's the robotics club, like robot fighting mini game. There's the boxing. There's the death races. There's a skateboarding, obviously. Am I missing any?
There was the casino, but that was basically just baked into the game anyways.
Right.
Esports club where you just went and played Virtual Fighter, so that's just baked into the game. Photography club I guess was a little bit more different because like you actually had to like be very specific with your photographs and everything, and that took advantage of like the photo mechanics and all that. There's another one, but I'm blanking on it.
With the girls club that you had to like
the girls club is basically just
sentences.
Yeah, that's basically just like their replacement for cabaret clubs. So it's a different aspect of that, but it's basically that same idea.
Yeah.
What was the other one? So on the bottom are there's skateboarding, photography, casino, girls club, esports. Or did I ever say esports, skateboarding, photography, girls club? What's the last one I'm missing? I don't remember either. Wee. Now I feel dumb.
Yeah, same.
But most of the stuff on that like bottom row is kind of like not as intuitive or just like as blown out as the top row is.
Right.
So there is that. But yeah, like the Robotics Club, I think minigame was just and it involved kind of like you having to go back and forth trying to find crafting materials and all that. So like that kind of made you want to do it less than the others, let's say.
And your partner robots were dumb as hell.
Yeah, that's true. The rhythm game took a while to get used to because the way they kind of just set up the buttons just felt weird. But once you get used to it, you kind of just understand it. I like boxing.
Costuming's good.
Costuming is real good, and all the special moves. Boxing was fun. I really liked going around and punching people. That was a lot of good times there.
Yay. And also having Keith Silverstein cheer you on.
Yeah. And then like the boxing mechanic as well just kind of felt pretty good. So it was a fun time. Death races, I think, lasted maybe a bit too long.
Yes, I agree.
But like I didn't think they were bad per se.
No.
Just long.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think like I said, like I think the robotics one is probably the worst of those. But that's just because I think that mini game was just
Yeah.
But it's worth it to get through like all that and to see like the stories and stuff. So
right.
Which is good.
Very, very good.
Like I mean, I told you like when we finished that whole school stories arc, I was like, I would have played just a game that was that.
Yeah. No, it was amazing.
And only that.
It was really entertaining. And as I mentioned before, we put a lot of time into the school stories because one, like, you know, it's fun getting to know these characters. These kids are weirdos and we like them. But like actually watching you like participate in the clubs basically is a lot of fun. And as we mentioned, the costuming and the special moves for the dance club were just like so funny.
It's one of the things that like the Yakuza series is really good at as a whole is like when they create these like good slice of life moments. And the school stories part of that is basically that in a nutshell.
Yeah.
So basically here's this big slice of life thing that also incorporates some other stuff from like the previous game as well. But overall is just like you going around helping these kids in their various clubs and uncovering some secrets here and there.
Mm-hmm.
Fun time.
Yeah, it was really really cool, and it also had some like depending on what was going on, some brevity to the story that was pretty heavy at times.
Yeah.
It's like, oh man, somebody got murdered. Well, let's go dance with the rabbits.
Hop
Upset
a
rabbit
step the
zoo.
rabbit zoo.
I will never get over the fact that they didn't dub it whenever they said that throughout the dance competitions, but then they did dub it near the end.
Mm-hmm.
I will never get over that.
It's very funny.
It was hilarious. Hilarious. But yeah, sometimes when people get murdered, you just gotta hop step rabbit zoo.
Or go box.
Or a box. Go beat up Kaito.
Poor Kaito.
While Keith Silverstein yells obscenities at you.
Yeah, that's for true.
I like how the wiki was like, oh yeah, Keith Silverstein was the Siren Bar owner. I was like, he was the boxing guy.
Yeah.
He was also the Siren Bar owner. But
he's there quite a few times.
yeah, he did a few things, but boxing guy was iconic.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing.
It felt like there was fewer side cases throughout the game. Like there's definitely fewer side cases you got through the detective agencies.
Mm-hmm.
Because the other game, that was primarily where you got them from.
Right.
It was just a long list of them. Whereas here, there's maybe like 10 you get from detective agencies. Everything else is either like you just get it through town. I think there's like 3 or 4 each for all the datables. So that takes up another chunk. And then there was that whole quest line of like the illegal detective agency thing. So that was a whole another thing as well. So it made it feel like there was less, but like there really wasn't, because there's still like 50 plus side cases you can do.
Right.
But for whatever reason, it just felt like there was less of those that you had to go around and do. I don't know. That could have just been me, but you saw how I play these games now and just how thorough I was with this game in particular.
I mean, that's fair.
We did all the school story stuff. We completed that. We did every side case. 54.
Mm-hmm.
We fought Amon, so that's that. And then we beat the story, so... And even doing all of that, only 40% completion.
God.
Which, of course, all of that is tied into, like, like the town go stuff, which is like, go play, go eat at every restaurant, eat everything at every restaurant, go buy everything at every store, and all that bullshit.
Right.
So, like, I'm not doing all that stuff. That's way too much. But I wanted to make sure I got through, like, all the school story stuff, did all the side cases, and obviously the main story. Like, those were, like, the 3 main objectives, and we were able to do all that. Just took a while.
It was good.
It took a while. We didn't even, like, stop and play any Master System games.
No, we didn't.
Bought them all, but then never played them. Which, like, I have no affinity for Master System games, so I think that's probably the problem there.
Right.
Like, I don't know any of these games. I know them by name, but, like, I don't know them.
No, same.
I'm just like, look at these games. All right, cool. Anyways, let's go play Sonic the Fighters.
Yeah,
And then be like, oh, this game sucks.
This game's bad.
So yeah, I think that's the main gameplay stuff with this, unless there's anything else you want to bring up that I'm forgetting.
That's all I could think of.
All right. A lot of game.
Yes.
Yes, indeed. Obviously, we're not going to go through the entirety of the plot, because like I said earlier, that would take a long, long time.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's probably better just to hit a bunch of like the key points and go through them for there.
Yes.
I know one of the things that this game has been criticized for is the way that it has like very dark themes in the story.
Yes.
Specifically, there is like, a lot of this game centers around a sexual assault.
Yes.
And how that is tied into a whole bunch of stuff that, unravels throughout the plot. But that point, I think in particular, is one of like kind of the main points people look at and pick apart, because they don't know if necessarily the game has the brevity to push that forward as a plot point, especially with where it goes.
Right.
How do you think this game handled all of that stuff well, or could it have done better, or do you think this is a case of like, video games are video games, and this is about as good as they're going to, or are good at, or as bad as they're going to do this sort of topics?
So I understand why a lot of people would be like, oh, this is not. And I even mentioned when we were playing it, like, it kind of sucks that a lot of this hinges on a sexual assault being fake.
Yes.
Like that does kind of suck. I will not lie. I don't think that necessarily makes it like a bad game, and I'm not really gonna fault it for that. Like I understand narratively why it's there. But it is a problem that like women don't get taken seriously as it is. So,
right.
Yay, now we have a game that's like, oh yeah, this woman totally lied. Woo! And I think that the problem with that, and I don't know if it will necessarily be the case, but a lot of the capital G gamers are some of the people who like parrot that whole like, oh, these fake accusations, thank you, fake accusations, they're out here to ruin men's lives and they could just say whatever they want, blah, 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 blah. Like so many of these are fake. Like a lot of the Venn diagram there is a circle, so I worry a little bit about that, because capital G gamers are not really known for being nuanced and really thinking critically about things. But then again, maybe they'll stay away from Lost Judgment. I don't know. I think on the other side of this, it shows like something that Yakuza games and Yakuza tangential games are really, really good at, which is like there's a dark underbelly to a lot of things that may seem fine on the surface. And I think that character in particular is a very good example of that. That like everything about her seems pretty freaking great until you really start to get to know what she's doing. You're like, oh god, she's like accessory to a few murders at this point. And all she really cares about is like this one thing not coming out, and she will do whatever it takes to avoid that happening. And so I think that like the idea of like, yeah, there are always going to be people who are very self-serving, like that's fine. And like in comparison to what some of the other characters do, like it's ultimately like where I was going with all this is that yeah, it sucks, but I don't think that it makes it like a bad game, and it doesn't really hinder my enjoyment of the game.
Okay.
It's more of a just like, well, that could have been done differently, but
yeah,
I'm not really surprised that it wasn't.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I agree with everything you said. Basically, kind of my thoughts on it. Because, like, I mean, look, the Yakuza series has never had sometimes the best way of dealing with issues regarding sexuality and, all of that. Especially, I mean, Yakuza 7 had problems with this as well.
Yeah.
And problems with some other stuff regarding, like, people lower on the totem pole of society, let's say. So it's something that I'm not surprised that they kind of fumble a little bit here and there. I mean, if you look at it like outside of the realms of like, hey, this is messed up.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it makes for a pretty wild narrative plot point per se, but like you can't obviously just look at it in that with those exclusive like super blinders on.
Right.
So like, yeah, it's definitely fumbled, I think. Like you could definitely get from plot A to plot B in a different way, but I think the way that they're trying to go for this is like it's almost shock value, but like the way these cases are linked makes it, I guess, more shocking because you would think the way that Ihara's original verdict is given to him
Mm-hmm.
would be like, that's so like denigrating. Why would you put yourself through that?
Right.
But then once you realize like what it's done in favor for, it's like, well, that's even more messed up. You're just messed up in general, dude.
Yeah, you are a show of a person.
So like you could have easily done, I think, something else for, the first point of this,
Yeah.
but I don't know if it would have been as like shocking or like wild if it was something else. Because like really, what else would you be able to do that is that bold and gets you on camera so much besides like robbing something, I guess. And I don't think
Yeah.
that's like as like, ooh, whoa, look at this guy. He's a real piece of trash.
Yeah, I don't think so. And the thing is that like he's a cop.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a really bad thing for a cop to be caught doing this. And the fact that he's constantly able to say like, "Oh yeah, like I'm a nasty pervert. You should just lock me up. I'm done." Like he's purposefully leaning into this like really really negative perspective that you get from doing this
Mm-hmm.
that I don't think you would have gotten as much with any other crime, that people are like, this guy is a scumbag and he needs to put it away. And even uh Zori is like, yeah, this dude sucks, like I'm his defense lawyer, but like this is a crime that's unforgivable.
Yeah,
Like
I
she
don't know like what else you could do that really creates that kind of like feeling in people outside of this, except for murder,
except for murder,
which we
right?
get to later, obviously.
We
But
get to
like,
that. And I also think that like I know that a lot of it was staged, but
mm-hmm.
also I think that like the fact that so many people were like willing to step up to like keep him under control before like the cops could get there,
Mm-hmm.
because not all of those dudes who held him back were staged. And I think that that like publicness of it is part of what makes it like so heinous in the eyes of society. Like if he was stealing something, all right, cool, like you're probably not going to see a crowd of dudes like holding him in place until he can get arrested. You're probably
No,
not going to see that.
definitely not.
So it becomes like a whole thing of like we have to protect like the quote unquote like weak of society, and we have to step up and do our part, and this guy sucks.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I don't know. I think you're right that like what else would you have done?
Right. I mean, it's one of those questions that like I don't know the answer of.
No,
So,
I don't either.
but yeah, um, I guess like the original Judgment, this game takes on like some interesting ideas of like societal norms and all that sort of stuff. Whereas original Judgment was like, you know, what do you do if you have something that can be a benefit to society but is very hurtful to a few? Do you go for the greater good, or do you know, basically try and stop it because it's hurting other people?
Right.
Whereas this is, about like a lot of corruption and, various aspects of, government, policing, all that sort of stuff. And looking at how each individual person, I guess, looks at how they feel about their own version of justice and like, what are they going to do when someone wrongs them? Like,
Mm-hmm.
how do they respond to that in particular? And also, there's a whole other subsection of this that revolves around the idea of bullying and like why are people obviously continuously doing bullying? Why do they keep getting away with it? What happens to the victims of bullying? How are they supposed to feel? What happens to the victims' families of bullying? How are they supposed to feel and take this? So I think they try and meld a whole lot more different aspects of all of that into this game, whereas like with Judgment 1, it was kind of just like one particular thing.
Right.
So that can make things a little bit more messy, but like, and specifically because these are very touchy subjects, I think, to kind of try and balance all together.
What you mean, like murder and suicide and bullying and
Mm-hmm.
all that? It's not easy to talk about. What?
I know, very surprising.
What? Man. Yeah, it gets dark.
Yeah.
It really gets dark. And I mean, there's also like the whole concept of like vigilante justice that you have to deal with here too.
Yeah, that is 100% true.
So, a lot of times you're like, I mean, for lack of better terminology, cool motive, still murder.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times you're like, yeah, that dude probably deserved it. He kind of sucked. But also, like, maybe don't murder him.
Cool motive, still murder.
Cool motive, still murder. That basically could be the subtitle of this game, honestly.
Yeah. It really could be.
Oh, man. It's funny.
Oh man. Man, where do we really begin with this game outside of just like talking about those story beats? Because there's like, despite us doing a lot of side stuff, there's a lot to this game.
There's a lot to this game, and as you mentioned before, like we cannot get into all of it. We'd be here all day.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. The wiki says the main theme of the story will involve whether or not Yagami will defend the law or enact justice. The more is he involved with the case. Yeah, I mean, it goes places.
Yes.
It definitely goes places. And like I was just thinking about the fact that like I got a text message from Woody pretty early on when he was playing it. And he's like, yeah, I don't know about this detective agency. Like one of the first things I did was beat up a bunch of high school kids.
Yeah. Right.
I was like, yeah, you did. But I do think that like it's worth mentioning that Sugiura and Tsukumo decide like, oh hey, we're gonna create a detective agency in Yokohama.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why you're there in the first place. Like it's not just like a random like, oh hey, we built this city and we gotta put you in there somehow.
So they're like narratively, they moved there to do a detective agency. All right, cool. Now you can come here.
Yay! So you end up like getting hired to investigate like bullying at the school.
Mm-hmm.
That was Serio High. Is that how you pronounce
Yes.
it? So that's like where you really like get the beginnings of the story is in the school. Before that is just not so much. It's more of a reintroduction of like, hey, you remember these people? They're all here. Yay!
Everyone's here.
Everyone's here. But yeah, a lot of it is really hinging on that whole bullying and suicide thing. And we'll say dead body, really gross.
Mm-hmm.
That dude's seen better days.
Mm-hmm.
Like several better days.
Yes. Maybe a month or two better days.
Yeah, I don't remember how long he'd been there. Like Was it a month?
It had been a while.
It'd been a bit, yeah. Ugh.
But yeah,
Um,
it's gross.
2 months. 2 months is what this says.
Stinky.
Um, yeah, those poor fire dudes are like, oh man, there's some arrows pointing this way. What's under that thing? What's under the tarp? Oh no. And they just like, ugh. I'm sure they smelled something, right?
I think they do.
Because like, oh, yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right. Like that that would smell terrible.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how like neighbors didn't complain about the fact that that would smell terrible. Like I know that that actual building was like abandoned, but that building had to have had neighbors, and the windows were always open.
You would think someone would be like, man, something smells here, but whatever.
Mm. Um, yeah, and like they pull off the tarp, his like head even wobbles, which makes sense that because he had his throat slit. Um, like Jesus Christ, that was gross.
Mm-hmm.
There's buggies everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yucky. We're gonna have to do a content warning on this, by the way,
Yeah.
just as a heads up. We're gonna have to do like a suicide bullying type kind of
Yeah.
content warning, sexual
Most
assault.
definitely.
Just as a side note,
Yeah.
a programming note here. Um, but yeah, how do we attack this?
So let's just set the story up, I guess.
Okay.
So, like you said, you get called to Yokohama to go investigate bullying at the school and everything, and then eventually you get called in by Saori as well to be like, hey, look into this murder that happened because I was defending this guy. Apparently, he was, he sexually assaulted a woman on a train. He got found guilty for it, and then once the guilty verdict was read, he was like, hey, by the way, there's this body in a Jinsho
In
of
this
this
building.
dude. It's in this building. Go find it. That's where he's gonna be. And lo and behold, that's where he is. And the dude they find is Hiro Migashiba. He was a student teacher at Serio High before he was murdered.
Mm-hmm.
And so that kind of wraps everything back up into the school, where you learn that like he was apparently a person who bullied this other kid who wound up committing suicide because of bullying, and the father of the kid who committed suicide was Ehara, who was the guy who was just found guilty for sexual assault.
Right.
So everything starts to kind of come all connected and everything.
And the teacher, I'm it starts with an S.
Sawa.
Sawa. Sawa like feels responsible for the whole situation. Like
because she was the teacher of them, so
she was the teacher. Migashiba like was under her while he was working there, and like there was a lot of things all tied up there together that
like Ehara sues the school eventually because he's like, well, someone's got to be responsible for this, and the school and like their lawyers basically strong arm Sawa from actually testifying what she saw, because she eventually does see Ehara's kid like come up to like the roof and he's like bloody, and Migashiba's looking for him, and then he eventually tells her like, hey, this is what's happening. And she gets very distraught about this because she's basically bullied into not testifying so the school looks good. And eventually, the court rules are like, oh, we couldn't find evidence of bullying, so sucks to suck. And that basically leads Ehara to like, I'm mad.
justice was not served.
But that's still like the tip of the iceberg with the story.
Yep.
You eventually find like this group of hooligans that are roaming around Kamurocho who are called RK, which are just like relics of the disbanded Tojo clan, because that still has ramifications from the end of Yakuza 7.
Yep.
So like they're just like a new form of a gang essentially that roams around, but they're not necessarily following the Yakuza traditions and all that sort of stuff. They're led by Soma and Akatsu.
Akatsu.
Where Soma's like the creepy dude and Akatsu's like your more traditional Yakuza looking dude.
Yep.
And
And is really, really, really wanting Kaito.
He wants Kaito. Also, they're looking for this dude named Shinya Kawai.
Yep.
Originally in Kamurocho. So that leads to that portion of the game, and then you also meet Jin Kuwana in Yokohama, who is the handyman, quote unquote. And then
he helps you fight off the Liamong, which um
yes.
Tasso is the Liamong like captain at that point, right?
Hmm.
And
The
he's good.
Claw
He's
Man.
Claw Man. Tasso is like one of the best additions to this game, period.
Hmm.
He's amazing. What a good character.
So basically, that's kind of your setup for this game. Like that's like the first like couple of chapters,
Yeah.
and then everything kind of just goes completely off the rails
Yes.
once you
Not in a
learn
bad way though.
once you learn exactly what's happening in the game.
Yeah.
Which so the whole thing with Kawana is a very wild ride.
Yes.
Because like the whole like for a lot of the game you're like trying to figure out, okay, who is this guy, because RK eventually are trying to find him.
Mm-hmm.
He shows up at Sawa's apartment,
Mm-hmm.
and then Sawa gets murdered by
Yep.
RK,
Yep.
and
By
Yagami the whole
Soma
time,
specifically.
yeah, and Yagami's like, how is this guy connected and everything, what's going on, what's the connection? And it leads you on this like very wild goose chase of trying to find him, trying to find information about him. And then you eventually just learn that, like, oh, by the way, he was the teacher for this kid who was also bullied, that who tried to commit suicide by jumping off the roof, but is now in a coma for 13 years. And what was the deal with him?
Mitsuru Kusumoto was
Yes. He
the
was
son.
Sawa's classmate, and that's why she was so bothered by
Yes.
the bullying that she had to deal with when she was a teacher, because she also witnessed it at her school and everything. So that's how she was connected to that.
Correct.
Yeah, Mitsuru is basically also like the son of the the vice minister of the Department of Health now. So like
And he's been in a coma for
he's been in a
13
coma for
years.
13 years. So that all happens. And then you also learn that Kawana was the teacher of that class when all
And
this was happening.
and you find the USB in his lighter or in his cigarette pouch thing.
Mm-hmm. That it has like hidden cam footage of like the day Mitsuru goes to commit suicide because he's getting bullied.
Yep.
And you find in that footage, you find Shinya Kawai, who RK has been looking for, who's
Mm-hmm.
now we presume is dead because that's what they tell you.
Yep.
You find what's her face? What's her face?
What's her face? The gal.
The gal.
Heck, I don't remember her name.
The gal.
Um,
I mean, I have ways to look this up.
okay. I don't remember.
Yui Mamiya.
Yui Mamiya.
So she is the lady that Ehara gropes on the train
Mm-hmm.
and is the victim of the sexual assault. But she's in this footage bullying this kid, and there's a couple other students in there that you recognize because they had spotted you when you were looking at the crime scene of Mikoshiba.
Yep.
So like all of this is connected,
Yep.
and then you basically come to the conclusion that the whole sexual assault case was a fabrication, where
With the help of Gavin.
where everyone's working together with Ehara on this. And then you eventually learn that Kuwana, once he quit being a teacher, he basically became like this vigilante justice that went around murdering bullies around Japan.
Yep. And he's got a body count of like at least 7.
Yeah, and you're just like, what the is going on? So like, and like all of those students know about this because he basically came to them later and was like, hey, I have this footage. If you don't want it coming out, you're gonna help me with all these stuff I want to do. So like he makes all of them basically accessories to his murders and everything, has him help him like kidnap people, and then
That's how Kawhi ended up getting thrown in a van.
It's like, this is very messed up.
It's super messed up.
It's
so messed up.
And like the whole time he's like he has to like convince himself of like, or he's trying to convince others of like why he's just in his doings.
Yes.
By being like, oh, these bullies, they get off, they're able to go live lives and everything, but their victims are, traumatized for life and all this sort of stuff. Or dead, So like, why do they get to go live lives and be happy when people they completely destroyed are gone or just messed up in general?
Mm-hmm.
So like those victims deserve justice, and I'm going to be the one that gives it to them. And that's basically the same reasoning with Ehara, because Ehara was someone who Kawana came to with this opportunity, and he was like, yeah, I'm gonna take this.
Yep.
Let's do it.
Definitely gotta murder that guy.
And he basically kind of has the same like understanding of justice in his own way that's similar to Kawana. Like, you know, I went through the courts and I tried to do this the legal way. The law did not help me. The law is and I'm going to, by doing this whole sham of, you know, the sexual assault verdict that's going to make him only serve 6 months in prison or something and then get out even though he murdered this dude. Like, I'm going to show everyone that the law is a sham and that you can't trust it. There's no reason to. Like, it's all just a fraud. And the whole time Yagumi's just like, I mean, I get why you did this, but...
Also, Sawa's dead, and that's not cool.
Yes. Yagami will very much loves to bring up the fact that Sawa is dead a lot in this game.
A lot.
Which is I think it's because of what happens in the first game with Emi Terasawa, where she was murdered after, you know, he defended the one dude, and then her memory is basically gone.
Right.
No one remembers her.
Right.
Except for Yagami.
Right.
And he doesn't want the same thing to happen again, so he keeps bringing her up, like, you can't just let her memory die off because, you know, you feel like you're justified in what you're doing. Right. You made her a victim in this, and she is basically collateral and everything that's happened so far. That is on you. You can't, you know, place that blame elsewhere when you are involved in this.
And he, like, keeps bringing up, like, I saw her when she, like, I saw her body and she had tears in her eyes. Mm-hmm. Like, she was scared.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, nope, that's bad.
Nope.
But also, like, the police are like, what if Kawana's actually the one who killed Sawa? What if we just got rid of all the, like, surveillance video that showed everybody else there?
Because you befriend the Yokohama detective by the name of Watanabe, who you meet at the original crime scene of Mikoshiba.
He basically looks like Gumshoe.
Yeah, essentially. He's basically your Date for this game, essentially. Yeah. And his whole thing is that, like, you know, we couldn't talk to Ehara because the Tokyo PD was, like, had him under lock and key, so we couldn't investigate that. And now everything with this whole Sawa case is being very weird and truncated because, you know, people up top are basically throwing out evidence and we can't do anything about it, so we don't know what's going on. Everything's real messed up. The whole system's just a mess. What is happening? So that leads you kind of into the second part of, like, the weird twists and turns where you find out about public security, which is basically the Japanese, you know, version of, like, the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, stuff like that. And their whole thing is that they want to get Kawana and silence him, essentially. So, like, they're going to get him into custody and just have him have an accident. Quote unquote. And the person who's leading public security is this guy named Bondo, who's also trying to, like, persuade Reiko Kusamoto, the mother of Mitsuru, who's now, like, the vice health minister, into helping him and, like, giving him information because they want, like, control of, like, pension.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's, like, a several $1 trillion pension that they can gamble with, basically.
Yeah. So they want to have a hold of that, and she's the one who has a hold of that right now.
Yep.
And also they kind of think that she has something to do with Kawana.
Mm-hmm.
And she's eventually going to, like, try and turn herself in and everything. But then Mitsuru wakes up and she's like, oh, I can't do that now anymore.
Can't make him son of a murderer. Yep. Yikes.
But the other thing that revolves around public security is that, like, they realize, like, you know, they've been basically looking the other way when it comes to RK. So, like, someone from public security has to be kind of, like, pulling the strings here. And you learn that Soma is basically been an undercover agent for them since dating back to his days in the Tojo clan and the Nikyo Consortium.
Yep.
And his whole deal is basically that, like, you know, they wanted to keep all of, like, the former Tojo clan people in line and have an eye on them, so he created the arcade network so that he would have basically control of all of them and keep an eye on everyone, and that way, you know, they wouldn't, like, branch out into society and cause even more chaos because they're unruly now because they don't have laws or families to look forward or to look after or to, you know, respect and all this sort of stuff, which is just like, ugh.
Yeah.
I've seen people be like, "Oh, I think that's a good idea, though." And I'm like, "No,
No.
do not be all for state-run criminal
Gangs.
organizations." Yeah,
Yeah, this is bad.
but like his
Also,
whole deal as well is just like, he's okay with getting his hands dirty because he's just going around murdering people and doesn't care.
yeah, he does not care. Also, he stabbed Kaito twice,
He did.
and that's not cool. And by the time Kaito got to be okay, he's like, "All right, I am ready to it up. Come on, you stab me." Um, I also think that one part that I think that was interesting about the RK whole situation was when was it Akisu?
Yeah.
When he has his realization of like, oh God, if he's undercover, now I know it. He's gonna kill anybody who knows this. Like he starts panicking.
Because he's like, he's gonna have like this place bugged. He's gonna be listening in on us. We have to get out. He's gonna kill all of us. And then immediately, as soon as he says that, here comes two cops, quote unquote.
Yep.
People in cop uniforms, and they just
blah blah
blah blah blah, and just light him up.
They unload on him, but like you can. I forget who his English voice actor is, but like you can hear the panic that this character has in his voice of like, oh no, oh God, we gotta go.
Yeah.
He's like, it's over, it's over.
Like that was all messed up, and I thought the way they used Tomo was interesting as well because like I feel like near the end he almost becomes like a horror villain at some points, just because like he'll just sneak in places and like you'll just be like, oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no, this is bad. He's here.
Yeah, I mean, he kind of did. Like when he showed up on the boat, I was like, oh Jesus.
Or when he shows up at the Mikoshiba murder site.
Yeah. Oh, that was scary, especially with the paintball thing. Oh. I swear, I was like, oh God, he just murdered a teenage girl.
Yep.
Oh no, because I mean, he didn't even hesitate when it came to Sawa. So I was like, oh, she's done.
Or the one guy that worked with Kawana, where he just snuck up behind him and slit his throat.
Right on the boat, like that dude. Oh God.
Or so like, obviously with what he did with Kaito.
Right.
Like this dude just does not blink.
No.
So he's going to get the job done no matter what.
I thought that girl was dead.
Because like I wouldn't have put it past him at this point.
No, I wouldn't have either. You're right. He was basically a horror villain. Like anytime he showed up, if you saw him, you're just like instant dread. Like, what is this dude gonna do now?
Yeah.
Usually it's bad. Actually, always it's bad.
Yeah, which obviously this isn't the first time like a Yakuza style game has done the whole like a cop infiltrating the Yakuza or the criminal underworld type story. I mean, that was a thing in 4.
Right.
But I think this does it in a very different avenue. Where like obviously Soma's just gone completely like off the rails to the point where like he is very much entrenched in the criminal underworld but he's protected by public security and the fact that he can just do whatever he wants and get away with it.
Yeah.
And there's no care in the world, despite like if I have to kill people, I have to kill people. I don't care. No one's gonna there's no one's gonna find out about me. I am protected. I have the power here. Which, like, even, like, the paintball scene, I think, is very much a power play of just, like, I'm going to shoot this girl and, it's pain and everything, but, like, it's very much I can do this whenever I want, and you know that.
Yeah. I forget, was it Kaito? It's like, oh, yeah, it's going to bruise us. Better be a shot.
Yeah.
It's funny.
Maxwell agrees. Meow meow.
He's just telling you his opinion.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate his good opinions. He saw a lot of that game.
Yeah, he saw all of that game.
So yeah, like, and then basically the game wraps up in a way that like you kind of expect. There's a big courtroom scene where they have the appeal of Ehara's guilty verdict, and that's where kind of everything kind of comes out in the open. Some of it, mostly the Ehara stuff, not everything in general.
Right.
Because then, like, afterwards, you have to go find where Shinya Kawai's body has been frozen and kept by Kawana.
Yep.
and get there before Arcade gets there.
Also, Kawana's plan B is always plan bomb.
Plan bomb. He says it very strictly. Plan B.
Yeah.
Plan boom.
Boom.
Kaboom.
Kaboom. Because Kawana is very, very adamant that, like, he does not want Kusamoto to go down.
Mm-hmm.
He does not. He wants her to stay, quote unquote, clean, basically. Like,
yeah. He's like, she suffered enough. She doesn't need to suffer more.
Yeah, that's like his big thing, is that he really needs her to be fine.
Mm-hmm.
Also, let me try that again. I thought it was interesting that the locket had the SD card in it, and we got the explanation about the worm, and how Yagami's basically just like, yes, I'm going to repeat exactly what I heard about Worm because I know nothing about this, but yes, Worm. This is the original video. You murdered a guy. How about that? It was very funny.
Mm-hmm.
Worm. He basically did like the fingerprints of a gun, but with worm.
Basically.
Yeah.
It's very funny. The only bad part about the finale was the part where the game crashed on us.
Oh, that sucked.
And we lost like an hour of gameplay.
That sucked real bad.
And I was like, all right, let's just go. I guess we'll have to do this again.
Yep.
That was very scary.
Yeah, because it apparently just doesn't save at all.
Until you get to a specific spot.
Until you get to a very... that we were in. Ripperoni. I think the only thing I didn't like about the finale is that, like, I felt like the whole thing's, like, the Soma arc should have been a bit more. Maybe a bit more outlandish. Because, like, you just have, like, 2 fights with him, and then he's just like, oh, I'm caught now. Yeah. And that's it. And then you fight Kawana as the final boss. Yeah. Which is like... I thought Soma was going to be the final boss. I feel like those two should be, like, switched or something. I mean, obviously, you have to fight Kawana because Kawana is very stubborn and still wants to say, like, oh, my version of Justice Fairy is you know, just... Yeah. Has to be this way. And Yagami's like, no. Not happening. So, yeah, I think maybe that stuff maybe had been switched or, like, could have been done better because, like... I don't know. With all the stuff that Soma had done, like I feel like he went down too easy. He went down too easy. Yeah, I think that's the thing. But also, we kind of cheesed our way through that fight, so maybe that didn't help. Yeah, that was great though. But it was pretty good. You basically just like Kamehameha him to death, and then also just like Invisa-hand him. And then basically the game wraps up in a way where you get Soma. He is taken into custody. Kusamoto shows up and is like, hey, I'm turning myself in. Kawana, you have to, I'm doing this no matter what you say. And he's like, I'm sad. But you have to let him go because, like, you have no evidence on him. Right. So you can't really be like, all right, you're going to get arrested too. Turn yourself in because he doesn't want to. Nope. And you don't have anything on him. So he basically makes mention of, like, you have to sit here and watch me leave because you have nothing on me. Yeah. And that's what happens, essentially. Yep. And then there's some like post stuff where like, you know, Kusamoto turns herself in. She has the last phone call with Mitsuru. Soma gets taken in. What's her face? You know, Mafiu and the other prosecutor dude who has a little bit of a face turn in this game after getting beat by Yagami, bust into Bondo's office and they're like, yeah, we're looking into you. You know what's up. And he's like, oh, no, you're talking about. You wouldn't do this. This could go up all the way to people who are cutting your checks. And it's just like, yeah, we kind of already did that. So yeah, that doesn't matter. We got your number, dude. We got your number. So all that happens. Like, I'm going to stand on my own 2 feet, ma'am. And she's like, yeah, well, I'm going to prison for a while. So see ya. Yeah, you got some time to get on your own 2 feet, son. The boys have some sushi. And also, an anonymous tip is called in, and several more bodies are found, and they were all bullies. So those are basically the Kawana bodies. Yep, the Kawana bodies. And then there's also a scene in Ijincho where like there's new school bullies, but then Koda, the girl who was bullied originally by the other teens, joins up with the teens to stop further bullying. Which is great. Yeah. Yay! The
I was
sushi was great though.
I was surprised they managed to make like the bullies turn into like less bullies over the course of that game, because I was figuring like these kids are gonna just suck this whole game, but then like Yagami beats the shit out of them a couple of times, but then it also helps Koda fight off the bullies and get the rest of the class to kind of like fight against them, and then eventually
Yeah.
they're kind of just like, oh, we were very weren't we?
Everybody
And
except for Akane.
yeah, Akane eventually has to figure it out the very hard way when she gets kidnapped by RK, but like even afterwards she's just like, yeah, I was real bad.
Yeah, I should not have done what
Mhm.
I did.
So like
And I love
seeing
that,
them.
like,
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say I love seeing them at the end because like they were actually really like adamant that they were gonna help this girl and like help Coda out to
Mhm.
help this girl. And so they were like, yeah, we've seen what this does and we're not gonna let it happen again.
And they even like show up at the end when like there's like fake cops that try and stop you from heading off to find Kawana.
Oh,
They're the
right.
ones who like make it this big distraction, which I thought was really good.
Right. Nice.
And I like this game does the thing I like in stories where like I think midway through when the first kid, the main dude bully, um begins to realize, hey, I was real to Coda, and Yagami's like, you should probably apologize to her, and he apologizes, and she does not accept it. She just walks
Right.
away,
Yeah.
and he's just like, ugh. But Yagami like kind of tells him like, hey, that was big of you to apologize. Like you should. I mean, hey, that doesn't mean she's going to accept it. It doesn't mean she ever has to accept it. But you did something good here, and I like that in stories where like not everyone is going to get forgiveness. Like I think obviously as we see later in the game, like she has forgiven them, I think, or at least
Right.
something has happened. But I feel like I'm more invested in stories, or at least interested in stories that like look at the way that how forgiveness can be between characters, because it is very realistic to have people who just aren't going to forgive other people regardless of what happens, regardless if they turn over a new leaf, regardless if they apologize vehemently or not. So I thought that was a really good touch there.
Yeah. No, I agree with you.
But yeah, I think the moral of the story, I was surprised that they were able to give
Make the
those
kids
kids
less.
kind of a redemption arc in a way.
Yes, I agree with you because I was not expecting that.
Mm-hmm.
And they ended up being good kids
Yeah.
eventually.
And especially because like Coda's like this shy kid who's like very timid and everything, but then like by the end of it, she's like, I'm gonna go help this kid who's getting bullied. Like, I'm not gonna let them do this. I'm not
Like
gonna stand
she's
for
the one that
this.
steps up and is like in charge of
Mhm.
stopping that bullying. Which is impressive.
Yeah.
Good for her.
But yeah, the boys get sushi.
Boys
And that's
get
your
so is
that's
the
your
cat.
credits. That's your credits scene where the boys have to play Junkin to eat sushi, and then a cat steals Kaito's sushi,
Rip.
which is pretty funny.
Very, very funny. Also we get the return of the arcade man. I forget his name.
Higashi.
Higashi. Such a good character.
I wonder, like the way he phrases the sushi thing at the end. Like, I wonder if he's going to start working with Yagami.
I also wonder that.
Because he says, like, here's sushi, courtesy of the Yagami Detective Agency.
Yeah.
When he rolls in, so I was like,
And I mean, like, he basically works with them anyway.
Yeah. They are definitely, like, they're still kind of, like, turds to each other, but they are more, like, willing to come together, I think, in this game compared to the first game.
I think it's hysterical how neither of them use honorifics towards each other.
Yeah.
It's so funny.
It's pretty good.
But he's so good. And like the one time that he's like hitting on Saori is really really funny.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't realize it's her, right?
Yeah, he doesn't realize until like someone like Mari says something, and he's like, "Wait a minute, what?"
But yeah, like him and the Leomon guy,
Tesso.
Yeah, both of those dudes were just like fantastic, really fantastic, so well written. Like Kaito's also still phenomenal, and I love him to pieces. But like those two are just A+.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the whole thing it wrapped up in a satisfying way, and I like the boys getting sushi, and I like the that we're seeing that the bullies are trying to fight back on bullying.
Yeah.
Um, and even like the school stories, like ultimate ending is a pushback on bullying, essentially.
Yeah.
Which is cool.
I agree.
Yay! Bullying's bad.
Yep. True, and that's for true.
Also, don't murder people.
Also, don't do that.
Yeah.
Like I said earlier, like I'm surprised there wasn't anything that they did for Yagami here, just in case they need to have an out for Yagami.
Right.
So I was surprised it kind of just wraps up with a nice little bow, and that's it.
Right.
But I guess we will have to wait and see where everything goes.
I mean, who would make the most sense to like be the next playable character if
Sugiura?
That's what I was thinking.
He's the only one that would fit like the
play style.
The play style, yeah.
That's what I was thinking too. Is that he's the most natural fit to be like the next protagonist if we have to have a next protagonist.
Yeah.
Like even at the end, like he was the only one that got super far with us in the final dungeon area because he's the only one that could actually like
parkour.
Parkour.
Yeah.
So I mean, it makes sense, but
yeah, it's just one of the things we have to wait and see because obviously they're not gonna. They are working on the next Yakuza game now,
right?
So Judgment's going to be a year, probably like 2 years, 2 to 3 years off if they make a new one,
right?
So and I'm assuming at some point they'll probably just like get things wired down with the
management company.
Yeah, the management. Or at least I'd hope so. At least.
Yeah, and I mean, from what I heard, and this could be completely wrong, some of it was an issue of they wanted to make sure that, which is wild because we had him in the weird vampire costume a lot, that there was no way that like his likeness could be used in ways that they did not approve of.
Which is why there's no PC versions of these games.
Correct.
Which, and like Sega wants to make PC versions of these games because they've done it for the other Yakuza games.
Right. It is wild since we had him in this ridiculous vampire costume, like as soon as we could, like whenever we were allowed to have disguises. It's like, oh yeah, we need to not stand out. What if we're a vampire?
It's the best one.
But I'm wondering, like, there's got to be something beyond that. There has to be.
Well, the other rumor, like for like Judgment, was like the reason there wasn't karaoke was because like his contracts with the entertainment industries is so weird that like they couldn't just get that one so he could sing.
Which is bizarre because he's a singer.
Yeah.
I mean, he's an actor too, but he's a singer. He was like in a J-pop band. Wildin'.
I mean, for the way like this dude talks about it, Takuya Kimura, like he seems to like this character and everything. So like,
yeah,
I think if it's an issue for his management, he's gonna be like, hey, I probably still want to do this.
Yeah,
and they'll find a way to figure out a way for him to do it still.
Makes sense.
I would assume that would be the case, but obviously I don't know the ins and outs of entertainment management, especially in Japan. So who knows? Right. But again, we have a couple of years probably to figure all that out and get all that hashed out.
And fingers crossed that it works out because Yagami's a good character and I like him a lot. Max does too. He just told me so.
Yes, he would. I think this was also kind of a good sign for this studio in particular because obviously this is the final game Toshihiro Nagoshi is going to be involved with because he's moving on to a different company altogether and he's gone.
Yep.
But this was directed by someone else. It was mostly written by other people. I think he was kind of just there to be like, hey,
supervising,
yeah. So like, I think this is a good first step to show like
we're able to do it without him.
Yeah,
basically.
At least I hope that's the case.
I think so. I mean, I really enjoyed this game, and I think the series will be fine.
Yeah,
it's a bummer, but I think it'll be fine.
Yeah. Which I think like he hasn't really even been like directing any of the games since like maybe the first couple. But
Oh wow.
he's been like I think kind of like one of like the key figureheads
Yeah.
in them. So
But I mean, maybe he influenced enough people that like,
I
you know,
mean yeah, totally.
they know what they're doing.
Let me see here. So like Yakuza 1, he was general supervisor producer. Yakuza 2, he was the original concept and general director. 3, he was original concept setting and general director, which that's basically kind of like the title he gets for a lot of these is like general director, but he's still
Yeah.
coming up with like the main plot, I guess, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
5, he was just general director.
Okay.
0, he was executive director.
I don't know what that means. What's the difference?
This might have been around the time when he had took like it was in between time where he took like a bigger role in Sega.
Oh,
So
maybe.
maybe he couldn't, but he was still like the general director of the studio at this point, while also being the chief creative officer of Sega.
Right.
Kiwami's he's just executive director because those are just remakes.
Right.
Um, 6 he is executive director, and then Judgment it has like based on a story by him an
Mm-hmm.
executive director, which is also the same thing for Lost Judgment, but then it just becomes general director. So probably fine.
Probably fine.
But yeah, it's gonna be interesting at least just to see what the next game looks like. Like it's probably not gonna look too different, but you know, narratively and everything, like
Still curious.
still curious. I will say as well, like the final thing I want to talk about with this game, unless you have
Okay.
other things you want to talk about,
Nope.
was the cameo,
Oh, yes.
which we were very surprised by because they did come out and say like, hey, you know, there's not going to be anything Yakuza related in this game. Like there's no
Yes.
crossovers here. But then,
We were both yelling when it happened.
yes, there is a scene where you head to the Liamang little area and Tesso's there and the boys are there and you get into a fight with Kawana. And then it's Sugiura and Tesso just like sitting there watching the two of them fight and they're just like, when do we stop this? I give it a bit. And then they like both like start collapsing. They're like, all right, let's stop this now. So they
Yep.
like get in there, like settle them down, and then Tesso brings them to go get some food. And who is the person cooking them food? Is this for you to come in now?
Oh, sorry. I'm trying to remember his name.
It's Chow.
Yes, he's the leader of the Leo Mong. Or he was the leader.
He's just
now
sitting there cooking. So he doesn't have a voice actor or anything. Like he doesn't have any lines,
Nope.
but he is definitely there cooking food for them.
He's cooking food, which is what he did in 7 as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, man, I hope that like that's just what he does now. Is just like runs this restaurant, cooks and makes food and makes people happy. But he's like in his regular outfit. And he's just cooking along.
It's really good.
I was so happy to see him though. I'm not surprised he didn't have any lines, but he did not have any lines.
Because they didn't have what's his face who runs Survive either have lines, even though he kind of shows up for a brief bit as well.
Yeah, that was strange too. He was just kind of like mean mugging you the whole
Yeah.
time. um, what is his name? Why do I call him Kashiwagi? Is that it? Is that right?
That sounds right.
I'm terrible with names. You know this.
I mean, I'm also terrible with names, but
yeah, seeing Zhao there was super, super exciting. Like we literally both were yelling.
I was like, oh,
Oh, it's him. He's here. He's making food.
that was a cool little cameo. Yeah, it's Kashiwagi. You're right.
Yay! I did remember a name. Finally.
Because like if you're gonna do like a little cameo like that, especially when you were palling around with the Liamang, like it makes sense.
Yeah.
Just do a little thing like that and then be like, all right, cool.
Yeah, because like nobody showed up with a Gamma Jewel.
None of like the main participants showed up, but that group had a very small part in the game.
Yeah.
The Yakuza group didn't show up because obviously they probably don't exist anymore.
Probably
No, they probably
not.
still exist, but like they didn't really have like a. They were mentioned, but they never really had like a presence in the game.
Right.
So.
And we became brothers with the Liamong.
Yes. Brothers.
Brothers.
Bro.
Bro.
So yeah. Yeah, that's basically Lost Judgment.
Yeah.
In a very truncated form, because that's a very long game. But
it's a very long game. We had to truncate it, or else we'd be here all day.
Mm-hmm. I had a good time with it.
It was very, very fun. I enjoyed it a lot. I'm sorry it took so long.
I completely understand, buddy. I knew going into it was going to take a while because, I guess, hey, we played this game through SharePlay together. That's the reason it took so long.
Yeah,
and Al has a little bit of a busier schedule than I do, and had some other stuff come up, so it was just took a little bit longer than usual, but it made for a more enjoyable experience.
I agree. I definitely ran like an international conference this month.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to turn in like a tenure dossier and had a switch in boss, and
a lot happened.
Yeah, a lot happened. Had to say bye to a friend.
Mm-hmm.
Which, speaking of friends, friend to the podcast, Maxwell, is 11 today, guys.
As we record.
Not
when it comes out, but...
Well, when he comes out, he'll be 11 in a few days.
11 and 4 days.
11 and 4 days old.
So there you go. Wish him a happy birthday, because he's a little man, and he will be like, look at my fat face. Flat face, not fat face. In case anyone is confused there. Look at my flat face. It's very flat, but also thank you. Meow.
Meow.
I'm a kitty cat.
But yeah, we did. We finally got through Lost Judgment, and it's super worth it.
Mm-hmm.
It was really, really good.
Yeah.
It was really good.
Definitely.
Yagami still has a stupid wallet chain.
He does. It's very good.
One thing that I will say that you probably did not notice, but maybe you did. The butts were much improved in this game.
Well, I'm glad the butts have they upgraded the butts.
They made Yagami's butt look better. They made Kaito's butt look better. Like Kaito had some freaking butt cake. Like Jesus, Kaito had a butt.
My God.
Which he did not have last time. But Yagami's butt at least was much improved, which was good because we have to look at his butt a lot.
It's true.
Mm-hmm.
Well, after having a slice of butt cake, I think we have reached the end of this episode.
What a way to end an episode,
what
right?
What a way. Yep. So if you'd like more from us, head on over to seasonalanimecheckup.com or sac.cool. It's where you can find past episodes of this podcast and other podcasts like Jared and Al watch. You can also find columns and reviews on the site as well. If you'd like more from Anladium, go to anladium.com. She's got columns and reviews. You can follow us on Twitter and TikTok at Anime Checkup. You can buy our books, One Shiny Moment, A Critical Analysis of Love, Life, Sunshine, and Hot Tubs and Pac-Man on Amazon.com. And you can support us on Patreon, patreon.com/SACOVA. Buy us a slice of pizza, get access to a wealth of unedited versions of the podcast early, and a whole host of bonus episodes and material as well.
Yay.
Next week, it'll be November.
Oh, Jesus.
And we'll have to sit outside in the cold November rain. But thankfully, we've got some stuff to talk about and warm ourselves up, like games we've played recently. I figure it's a good time to open up, I should say, the grab bag.
Oh, snap.
And dive into that, because we have to talk about games such as, I don't know, you probably want to talk about WarioWare.
Yeah.
Or you can. Maybe some Tales.
Yeah.
If you want.
Sure.
Maybe some other stuff you've been playing. I don't remember what else you've been playing, but there's probably other stuff as well. But I want to talk about Castlevania Harmony of Descent and how that game sucks.
Yeah.
And also, we got to talk about The Good Life.
Yeah.
Because boy, howdy, that's a video game.
Yeah, I couldn't beat it, so I wanna talk to you about it.
I'm going to dive into The Good Life for you next week.
Thank you. Yeah, I couldn't get through the gameplay. It made me too stressed out. And
so
I'm way too stressed out as it is.
True. So look forward to all of that, and maybe less, maybe more, who knows. We'll get into it next week.